Today we have Jonathan Wong with us set up here. All right. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being on. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is Jonathan Wong. I'm from Honolulu, Hawaii. I've been training in the martial arts for 23 years now. I've trained in a variety of styles. I started off in Filipino Eskrima, and then I studied Shinden Kempo, Shodan-ryu Karate, and then I spent my longest years training in Hungar Shirley Foot Kung Fu. I did that for about 10 years. And then after that, I studied Hawaiian Lua, boxing, Muay Thai, BJJ. And then for the past 10 years, I've been studying Uechi-ryu Karate. It's been an interesting journey, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of my insights in just the world of martial arts with you guys today.
It's awesome, man. So what inspired you to start martial arts?
You know, the thing that inspired me most to get into martial arts was just, you need an exercise routine. And for me, cardio and weights are fine and all, but I wanted to do an activity that taught me a practical skill. So that's kind of how I got into the martial arts. I've always been a fan of the martial arts. Growing up, I watched all the movies and TV shows and stuff like that. So I always wanted to do it myself. And knowing that I needed a regular exercise routine, just the practical aspect of it is what, all of those factors combined is what got me into the martial arts.
That's awesome. So roughly, altogether, how many years do you have in martial arts combined?
How many years? Sorry, could you repeat that?
How many years do you have combined in martial arts?
23 years altogether.
23 years?
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you plan on opening up your own school?
I'd love to open up my own school one day. That was kind of like my retirement plan. After I retired from my regular day job, just, opening up my own school and just training the next generation. Yeah, that's definitely part of the plan.
It's awesome. That's what keeps tradition alive, and that's what keeps martial arts going.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about yourself, man. Like hobbies.
So a little bit about me. I'm a former college instructor / counselor. I did that for 15 years. Right now, I'm a trainer for the U.S. Navy. So I work with sailors on things such as their leadership skills, stress management, communication skills, things like that. So that's the day job. What else is there? I'm Hawaiian Chinese. That's my ethnic background. So that's kind of one of the things that drew me to learning to the martial arts as well, just learning the warrior aspect of my culture. The Hawaiians had their own martial art called Lua. I was fortunate enough to study that for about 2 years. And of course, everybody knows Kung Fu. I was fortunate to train in that for about 10 years. Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit more about my background.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the Hawaiian martial arts? I mean, I know what it is. I've heard of it, but can you, for our listeners?
Sure. So Lua is the name of the Hawaiian martial art. It's very, the techniques of the martial art, it is a warrior battlefield tested art. So the art is preserved pretty much from what it was from antiquity. The techniques, they're striking, but it's most famous for its bone breaking techniques. When we say bone breaking, it's more like joint breaking. You're not necessarily shattering bone, but you're breaking the joints of an opponent. There's also a lot of nerve strikes. And then as far as the weapons aspect goes, we do study traditional Hawaiian weapons. So the Hawaiian weapons are made out of, bone, wood, and rocks. So there's the club, the dagger, and the most famous weapon was called the leo mano, which is a shark tooth club. So they have a club and they embed the teeth of a shark into it. So you do a lot of ripping and tearing with that particular weapon. It's pretty fearsome to look at, and it's really cool to hold and manipulate.
That's awesome. So what was your biggest influences early on?
My biggest influence in martial arts? I would say all of my teachers combined. I've been fortunate to study with lots of different teachers over the years, and each of them influenced me in different ways. Obviously, my Kung Fu Sifu, who I spent the most time with, was a big influence on me. His name was Eugene Ho. He passed away several years ago, but he was a really big influence on my martial arts. He was a published author. He wrote several books on the martial arts, Kung Fu, along with his Sifu Buksam Kong. I learned a lot from Sifu Eugene. Some of my other, all of them I learned a lot from. My Eskrima instructor, Alan Fujii, I learned a lot from him. From him, I learned, just the practical side of the martial arts, about how to take your lessons from beyond the dojo into the real world as far as combat goes. From my Kempo instructor, his name was Charles Morita, I learned about the lessons that go beyond the dojo into the real world. Just perseverance of a martial artist. You take that into all aspects of your life, the discipline. And that's something that, I try to instill in my students. I'm not a martial arts teacher per se, but I've been a college instructor. I'm a trainer for the military. And those are skills that, I like to perpetuate on in my students, the discipline, the never give up, the never say die attitude, stuff like that. Yeah, all of my teachers are big influences on me.
Absolutely, man. I get that. In Taekwondo, we have the tenets of Taekwondo, and it's courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and a dominant spirit. And that's the code I live by. You know what I mean? And I try to pass that on in all aspects of life as well.
That's awesome.
So how has martial arts changed your life outside of the dojo, outside of training?
It's just a character discipline. Again, we talk about that never say die attitude. I try to live my life by, the Bushido principles, the chivalry principles, the warrior, that warrior ethos in real life. Protect your family, protect the innocent, protect the weak, those who can't help themselves, so that leads me to, giving to charity when I have the opportunity to do so. In the work world, whenever I encounter, difficulties or barriers, that martial arts attitude is always there, and it carries me through the adversity and over and through the adversity. So, all those lessons that you learn within the dojo apply outside the dojo, not just in fighting arts, but just to your life in general. And, I think that's the biggest takeaway that any martial artist can take. It's just that attitude of how you live outside the dojo in the rest of your life. It's not just about punches and kicks. It's about, everything in your life.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So do you have any hobbies?
Aside from martial arts, I do, I've done acting. I've done comedy. I enjoy music. One of, my Lua instructor, one of the things that he taught us about life is just living a life of balance. In Hawaiian martial arts, we have the idea of Lua. The art is called Lua. Lua in Hawaiian means two. And the idea of balance in life is balancing your masculine and your feminine energies, or what the Chinese would call the yin and yang, or the Asian martial arts call yin and yang. In Hawaiian, we call it ku and hina, the masculine and feminine. So that was like one of the biggest takeaways that I learned from my Lua instructor. His name is Mitchell Eli. Just living a balanced life. So, he said the warriors of old were not brutish people. They lived balanced lives. So they participated in music. They participated in the arts. So that's kind of what I like to do. I sing karaoke in my spare time. I've done acting on the side. So getting in touch with that cultural, with that cultured side of your life is really important, beyond just, the warrior aspect of it. Yeah. So that's another example of how the martial arts goes just into your daily life, not just what you're learning in the dojo.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you mentioned Bushido, so I'm sure you've read the Book of Five Rings by Musashi.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's same dude. I play guitar and I'm very, it flows together.
Yeah, totally.
So you said you have 23 years in. Can you tell me how martial arts has changed over the years from your perspective?
I think, growing up in my times with the martial arts, I've kind of seen it evolve, the trend is kind of moving away from towards the traditional martial arts. A lot of, everything is MMA nowadays. When I was a little kid, the big influences were like, Bruce Lee, and then I got into like karate, and nowadays everything is kind of MMA. So I think, that whole MMA drive is kind of changing the martial arts industry. I don't see as many people training in traditional arts like karate or kung fu as much anymore. People don't have the patience or the time to, learn how to hold a horse stance for, hours on end, or the training of like, kata or forms. Everything is kind of getting towards the, sparring, stuff like that. So I think, the mixed martial arts aspect has definitely changed the industry as far as I can see.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, man, like I didn't understand the kata, the poomsae, the forms, like in my mind, you know what I mean? But now after so many years in, I love it. It's about the tradition, you know what I mean? And it's just, it's hard to explain, but I don't want to see it disappear, but I get what you're saying. A lot of places are taking it out.
Yeah, I love learning kata personally. Training kata to me is kind of like a link back to your lineage. These forms are hundreds, if not thousands of years old. And when you train a kata or a form, you can, I personally can feel a link back through, your martial arts ancestors. And I think, it's a deeply spiritual exercise when you're performing a kata. And for me, it's also that aspect of moving meditation. Yeah, I find it to be a deeply spiritual and mental aspect, not just the physical performance of it, but, again, that connection to your lineage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it's a lot like shadow boxing. Like, it'll help me apply it. You know what I mean? Like, if I learn the kata just for the belt, it's not the same. But if I practice it over and over and over and over again, and I spar, I'm not going to spar the same way I do the kata, but I'll be able to apply the technique better.
Yeah. It's all muscle memory. So,
Yep.
There's times where, when I'm sparring where I can feel the move just kind of come out of me straight from the kata. Yeah. It's kind of trippy how the muscle memory works.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you feel about online training?
How do I feel about what kind of training? Sorry?
The online training, like how everybody's shifting to online. Like, I know a lot of places had to whenever COVID happened, but now that mess is all over. You know what I mean?
I think it's really helpful. I think it's really cool nowadays how you can just, go on YouTube and you can find, all these videos from different styles, and, you can kind of analyze and learn different styles that way. I think the online aspect has been very helpful. Obviously during COVID, everybody shifted online because out of necessity.
Yeah.
But, even before COVID happened, people were posting their videos up on YouTube. I found that to be very helpful during my time as a younger student. Just being able to watch videos from masters or advanced students from different dojo within the same style, or even nowadays just watching videos from other styles from what I'm learning right now. I consider myself to be a true student of the martial arts. I enjoy learning different styles, which is why I've been so prolific in my own training across different styles over the years. And to answer your question, yeah, I think the online aspect has been a good thing. It's definitely opened a lot of doors that were not there previously. So I think I consider it to be a blessing.
Yeah, I do too. My only beef is that it doesn't replace an actual dojo or actual training. If you don't know anything at all, you know what I mean? You can't get hurt. But if, let's say you or I, since we have experience, in the martial arts, if we watch a video, we could take from that, you know what I mean? And this has been going on for years. Like, it's nothing really new. Chuck Norris and Danny Lane had those VHS tapes years ago, and it's the same thing, just modernized.
Yeah. Years ago, I came across, on eBay, I bought a bunch of, just looking to expand my ever curiosity into the martial arts. We don't have American Kempo here in Hawaii. That's, the Ed Parker martial art. I came across Ed Parker sensei who was selling a distance learning course. This was before the era of YouTube. So all of it was done over VHS tapes. So, I bought his VHS program to learn the Ed Parker system. I've watched through all the videos, but for lack of having a partner here, I didn't bother doing his distance testing because I had nobody to train the techniques with. But,
yeah.
I don't consider myself to be part of the Ed Parker lineage because of that, but I was able to, get insights into the style by being able to review the techniques through the videotapes.
Yeah. So have you done any competitions or anything like that?
I've never competed. I've had the opportunity to. I just haven't. I just never saw the need for it. One of my instructors, when I was studying One Hop Kundo, they're very, it's a Kaju Kembo offshoot, so they're very big into doing, tournaments and stuff, but I just never competed. Yeah.
My days are over with. I did years ago. Now it's more about the students. So what's it like over there in Hawaii?
It's very hot and humid here and very expensive.
I'm sure, man.
But, the great thing about living in Hawaii, we are kind of like a martial arts paradise here. We have just about all the different martial arts from the different cultures here. So, You're able to study Filipino martial arts. You're able to study Chinese martial arts, Japanese martial arts, Hawaiian martial arts, American martial arts. So, I consider myself to be very blessed to have been born and raised here. Not to say that you can't get all of that, in a big city on the mainland, but,
Yeah.
I think, you're not going to find too many Filipino or Hawaiian martial arts on the mainland as you would here in Hawaii.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. That is very true. So you said your goal is to eventually open up a studio, a school.
yeah, eventually, after I retire from my regular career.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That's cool. What type of school do you plan on opening?
Excuse me?
What type of school do you plan on opening? Kung Fu?
That's a very good question. Probably a Kung Fu school, or, yeah, I'd have to think on that more. I've studied Kung Fu the most out of it, but because I have a background in all these different things, I like to integrate some of what I've learned in other arts as well. So I'd have to kind of really think about how to market it. You see a lot of traditional schools, teaching additional arts as well. One of my friends has a Kung Fu school, but he also offers BJJ classes and, eskrima classes through his Kung Fu school as well, just because, you have to differentiate yourself in the market. And, BJJ is so popular nowadays that, that does draw people in the door as well. So, I really need to kind of workshop and think through, what my own offerings are going to be one day when I do have my own school.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that, man. So if you could leave some advice to the next generation of martial artists, what would you tell them?
So advice for the next generation of martial artists, I think the biggest things that I would leave for them is have fun with your training. If you're not having fun, why are you doing this? So first and foremost, have fun with what you're training. Number 2 would be know your why for your training. What is it that you're trying to get out of training? Are you trying to be, a tournament champion? Are you looking to improve your physical fitness? Are you looking to delve deeper into the cultural aspect of whatever martial art that you're studying? Is it the self-defense aspect? Just have a firm reason as to why you're training. So know your why. And then I think the final thing that I would leave for, newer students or the next generation of martial artists would be, let me see, know your why, have fun. There's one other thing I wanted to share that has totally fled my mind right now.
That's all right, man. We can get back to it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
So what's your biggest accomplishment so far in martial arts? Like
my biggest accomplishment, I would say just getting through the whole curriculum of my Kung Fu program. I got my red shirt, almost 20 years ago now. And, I consider that to be my biggest accomplishment because I was able to get through the entire curriculum and graduate from the program. That's something that I haven't replicated yet in other arts, just for various reasons. But it kind of just goes to show you again, just talking about life lessons. The word Kung Fu itself means hard work. If you're able to put in the hard work and see something through, you can accomplish just about anything. So I consider that to be, my biggest accomplishment in the martial arts, just, getting through something from beginning to end and, graduating, just like high school, just like college, seeing something through to completion.
Yeah, it's definitely a big accomplishment. So circling back, can you explain to me your rank structure in Kung Fu? Because I'm not familiar with it.
So in our school, the whole belt system is a Japanese invention. White belt, yellow belt, orange belt, all the way through black. That's from the Japanese system. In our Kung Fu school, we don't have any belts. We have, you're either a graduate or you're not. And in our Kun, the Chinese word for dojo, our Kun, we had a 3-phase program. So in Kong Si Lum Pai, you had to learn 18 different sets or kata. So phase 1 was 6 sets. Phase 2 was 6 sets. Phase 3 was another 6 sets. So 18 altogether. When you got through all 18, you're considered a graduate and you're awarded a red shirt. So that's kind of how we were rated in our school. You're either a red shirt or you're not. Anything below red shirt you're still a beginning level student. Once you earn your red shirt, you're considered a graduate. And that was kind of how our school worked. I can't tell you about other Chinese schools because I've never been in any other Chinese school.
So what type of Kung Fu was it?
So our school taught Hung Gar and Choi Li Fut systems of Kung Fu. So Hung Gar is a Southern style, very low stances, very based on tiger power. For those of you who follow martial arts, who understand the Chinese martial arts, it's the study of the 5 different animals: tiger, leopard, snake, dragon, and crane. So that's the Hung Gar system, is very much based on the tiger movements, the tiger and the crane. The Choi Li Fut system is also a Southern style, but it has a lot of Northern influences. So the stances are a lot higher. The handwork is more flowing. A lot of circular movements. It's a beautiful system, the Choi Li Fut system. I love the Choi Li Fut system. I had the opportunity to study Choi Li Fut in more depth for about 7 years under my other sifu. His name is Kiran Tong. Very beautiful system. If you ever Google Choi Li Fut on YouTube, you have a chance to see our set. They're very beautiful to watch, and they're even more beautiful to perform. And then the Kung Fu system, you do learn the traditional Chinese weapons. So you learn the broadsword, the spear, the staff, the kwando, which is a halberd, which was used to take out horses' legs and in ancient warfare. What other weapons are there that we learn? There's the chain whip, there's the butterfly knives, the double hook swords. All of those are advanced weapons that you learn in the advanced program. The basic program teaches the spear, the bow staff, the kwando, and the broadsword. Yeah, so it's a pretty full curriculum that we learn in our school. So hand sets, weapon sets, 2-person sets. Yeah, going through our school, you had a pretty good feel for everything. The partner sets gave you a good chance to learn how to, to work with a partner or an opponent to practice your skills with. Yeah, all the sets or kata or like living textbooks into the martial art. Kata is a Japanese term. In Chinese, we just call it a set and not a kata. Yeah.
Yeah. In Taekwondo, we have the poomsae, but we call it forms. It's the same thing as kata. Well, Mr. Wong, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We'll do this again later on too, especially if you open up your own school. I want to hear about it.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, buddy. Thank you.